I'm Jane Reynolds, the virtual bird, a trans woman who makes folk music. So I was born in Middletown, Ohio, in the United States, and I grew up relatively poor for a child. I lived with my mom when I was like a baby, and then my mom's boyfriend at some point in time, they hit me, and so my mom was forced to give me up to a relative, and that relative was, was my grandfather Kim, who kind of took care of me in status. But Kim, he was an addict, and on top of that, he was disabled, and on top of that, he didn't get, he couldn't have a job because he was physically disabled. So he had to get money from the government, and now I get money from the government, and I'm like, okay, this all makes sense now because I don't get anything. It's cents on the label, you know. Along with that came some, a lot of trouble. Kim himself, he was an addict in a pretty bad way, where he would be doing pills or Oxycontin or other kinds of like pharmaceutical drugs that can really ruin your life if you give them a chance to. With that came him stumbling around the houses while I was a kid and rambling to himself in the midst of the night, and it's pretty traumatizing for a kid. I'd say I did care about him at the same time because he was like a dad to me. All of this brought me to wanting to make music. I'm not surprised that I'm dead. I started playing the guitar at 10 years old, and it was the same time, like around that age, that I wanted to leave the house more and more. So I was going outside after dark and even daylight, and I would just travel as far as I could within a day because I just wanted to not live there anymore at the age of 10. And it got to the point where I was sleeping outside a lot, pretty much like a childhood homelessness. But people tend to say to me that, like, why didn't you stay? You got food at least sometimes. It's like, well, I think that I probably got fed more sleeping outside. After things got too bad with Kim, my grandfather that started to raise me, I was kind of just losing it. Like every day at school, I wanted to just break everything. I was completely out of my element, and so every day it was just me burdened with school stuff, and then coming back home to Kim face first and a plate of cocktail sauce high on whatever prescription drug. One night I got so upset, and I was like, I picked up the phone and I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, Kim's a drug addict, and I'm sorry that I'm only telling you this now, but you know how it is, it's hard. And so my mom decided to come over from one town to the next town to pick me up, and then saw Kim how he was at the time. She was like, oh my God, how did I not notice any of this whole time? when there was time off of school, or when I wanted to, basically, I would go traveling outside of the state. So I built up this culmination of traveling farther and farther, and not caring enough about myself that I would put myself in whatever danger would come. And so on the road, I would be encountering all these malicious people, but also a lot of really cool people. So there's this really fucking weird balance of like homelessness philosophy, where you're just like, don't trust anyone unless they give you a good enough reason to trust them. This was about the time where I discovered that I suffer from a disorder called schizophrenic, like schizophrenia. In my own experiences, it's like, okay, imagine you're sitting in a living room with your friends. One moment, you get up because you're tired, and you go upstairs, and you can still hear your friends, and then you have a thought. You start talking to your friends with your thoughts, and your friends are replying to them, but they're only replying to it with hateful comments. Then you have this barrage of all of the people personal in your life that you're with right now. And then it leads into other people. It goes into even random people that you don't know. And they're all saying hateful stuff about the thoughts that you're having while you're having them, and everything that you respond to how they're being hateful to those thoughts with. That was the moment that I realized that I was schizophrenic. It ended up with me spending 6 weeks in a mental hospital.
Hey, so this is a song I sing when my schizophrenia is getting really bad.
The mental ward, they clarified that I was psychotic, which, no, that's a terrible thing to say. I'm not psychotic. The anxiety from school built up until I was done with it, and then after that, I was like, let me make a radical life decision, because I don't know, mental illness, I guess. And I moved into an apartment with some people that I met. I met up with these people. They said, hey, you can rent this room for $200 a month. And I was like, okay, fine. That sounds great. And then I learned over time that they were meth addicts. One day I came back home, and all my stuff was gone. All stolen by my roommates and then pawned off for drug money. So I ended up getting really high and really drunk. I took a brick and I smashed it through the local bank's window, and then I took my knife and I destroyed their ATM. I hopped my first freight train with a couple guys I knew, and from that was just a journey that I didn't know that I was going on. I would play my music in exchange for money on the street, and when nobody liked it, I would just bother them until they gave me money. It's called spanging in America. And I would dig food out of trash cans. It was a real mess. And I met some of the most important people in my life in those travels. And while I don't think that everybody should do that kind of thing, I think that maybe doing it with some sort of trust fund that you've given yourself would be good for you. Just to experience the world, like responsibly, instead of the way that I did it, which was broke, starving, and stupid. Looks like my headset's dying.